The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or even turning a page difficult, if not impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. The Not Your Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from USA Today for Thursday, July the 23rd, 2026. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost. And opening the front page, sanctuary cities face losing federal money to process rape kits. Trump demands signed agreements to work with ICE. Nick Penzenstatler of USA Today writes, Fresno City Attorney Andrew Jans was furious to learn that Trump administration is threatening to withhold grant money the city uses to help prosecute rapists, all because the California city was deemed a refuge for immigrants. Justice for victims should not be politicized. It has nothing to do with immigration enforcement, Jans told USA Today. It's the latest example of the Trump administration's promise to withhold funding from cities it calls sanctuary jurisdictions. It pressures cities to sign cooperation agreements with immigration and customs enforcement officials with the strongest tool at its disposal, money. There will be no federal money for bulletproof vests for cops in Santa Cruz, California, the city says in a lawsuit. No ambulances for paramedics in Beaverton, Oregon. And now, no money for police departments to process rape kits in Fresno, as the administration threatens to withhold federal grants for crucial services from cities that will not sign deals to work with ICE. Now, cities face a hard choice. Give up the federal money, sign the ICE agreements, or fight the Justice Department in court. Jans is ready to sue. Fresno has already gone to court over other grants tied up by the administration's campaign against diversity, equity, and inclusion. The DOJ sent out a warning shot. We sent one back, according to Jans. Los Angeles County said it is foregoing many federal grant opportunities. Miami is facing backlash from residents after city leaders signed on to ICE's program. And other cities like Seattle and San Diego are launching their own court battles. In October, the DOJ identified 12 states, 18 cities, and 3 counties that it said materially impede enforcement of federal immigration statutes. In general, many of those locations refuse to share information with ICE, hold people for ICE, or allow agents into their jails. A California federal judge dealt a blow to the Trump administration on July 9 when he ruled the federal government could not withhold public safety grants to Oregon and California cities. Another battle is brewing over the sexual assault evidence kits. Judge William Orrick wrote in a 68-page ruling that Trump overstepped, and he agreed with Fresno and 7 other cities that the strings attached to the grant have nothing to do with or contradict the congressional purpose. Orrick wrote that the public has a legitimate interest in seeing its communities receive funding for critical infrastructure and public safety initiatives, funding that is paid for by their federal tax dollars. Now, the same judge ruled last year that Trump could not deny funding to Boston, Chicago, Denver, Los Angeles, and 30 other cities over a lack of immigration enforcement cooperation. He did the same in 2017 during Trump's first term. Police officers in Corvallis, Oregon, rely on body armor funded by the Justice Department. Corvallis Police Chief Jason Harvey told a federal court in a legal filing last May. Without that money, that's about $27,000 over the past 2 years, his officers risk unnecessary danger. Such loss risks officer safety and reduces their capacity to effectively protect city residents, Harvey wrote. The city's fire department would suffer without the federal funding as well. Corvallis' ambulance service would be slower to respond to 911 calls, which would put people's lives in danger, according to the city's fire chief, Ben Janes. In Santa Cruz, California, FEMA grants, policing grants, and a water supply project to build drought resiliency are all in jeopardy if the government continues to threaten to withhold money, according to Elizabeth Cabell, city's finance director. She painted a bleak picture. Layoffs for city employees, cuts to basic city services like reliably providing water, and hardening the city against natural disasters, such as wildfires and earthquakes. Not knowing whether Santa Cruz will receive its federal funding puts the operations of at least 4 city departments in question, Cabell wrote. Uncertainty regarding federal funding means the city cannot know whether to operate, pause, or even cancel its programs. Last year, the president signed an executive order directing federal agencies to suspend grants to states and cities that do not cooperate with immigration authorities. Now, that included grants to pay for processing rape kits used to convict child sex offenders in Fresno. Jans, a career prosecutor whose office filed more than 30 cases against suspected rapists with the federal money in Fresno alone, said victims are the ones who suffer. Leaders in the fight say the $350 million sexual assault kit initiatives paid for by federal grants is a proven crime-fighting tool that has no ties to ICE or the controversial detainment or even data sharing between local and federal officials. Even with that investment, the program was not perfect. A USA Today investigation in 2024 showed departments had haphazard protocols and were slow to build cases to achieve justice for rape victims. Now the program may be further choked by the Trump administration's withholding of money. Some of those places still have rape kit backlogs, forensic evidence waiting to be tested and entered into a federal DNA database to search for matches of other rapes and serious crimes. More than 21 locales that initially received grants to test rape kits are now considered sanctuary jurisdictions. Fresno is in the middle of using its $2 million grant to test a batch of 400 rape kits. That's now at risk of being stripped, Jans said. DOJ grant administrators sent Fresno a note in June, noting that the city had not signed a certification saying it would cooperate with the Department of Homeland Security and ICE or risk losing the money. The Justice Department wanted to make sure it was not an oversight. Jans said the situation puts the city in a bind. State law prohibits sharing that type of information, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld the constitutionality of that law. This is a bad time for them to hold up testing for victims of sexual assault, Jans said. This is a no-brainer. Let's help these victims get justice. Now, he sent the DOJ an answer to its warning. There was no mistake. The city will not be helping ICE. He said his letter is likely a final step before the showdown heads to court. The Justice Department declined to answer questions about the future of Fresno's grant. Applicants are required to submit a certification that they will comply with federal law, DOJ spokesperson Wynn Hornbuckle wrote to USA Today in an email. Fresno made good use of past grant money. It tested more than 2,500 backlog kits, funded 33 new cases, and convicted 4 people of rape. Now, Joyful Heart Foundation leaders were outraged by the funding threats. They advocated for rape kit funding in 2015 under President Obama when the backlogs were revealed. They argued that the return on investment for testing rape kits is proven. Studies from West Virginia and Ohio show that being able to tie rapes across borders to one criminal prevents other crimes and can save communities millions of dollars. Denying a city funding to test kits is wrong-headed when your stated goal is taking dangerous offenders off the street. This from Ilse Knecht, the organization's director of policy and advocacy. Rapists are often serial rapists. They're not specialists. They don't stop until they're stopped. Red state, blue state, those guys move around. Knecht said kneecapping an effective sexual assault program is stomach-churning. She pointed to convictions across the country that came from the sexual assault testing program. Last week, Dallas police announced the arrest of Jarvis Pierce, age 35, using DNA testing from the federal program. He's accused of a cold case rape more than 10 years ago. Now, other cities on the West Coast have sued the administration over similar restrictions in DOJ grants related to diversity, equity, and inclusion language and immigration enforcement. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Administrative Chief, Naviot Kaur, whose office represents 10 million residents, wrote in a legal filing that he was forced not to apply for federal funding to test rape kits because of the sanctuary jurisdiction classification. Administrators worry the county's backlog of unsubmitted rape kits would grow and victim services would lag. Portland, Oregon has $8.6 million in active DOJ grants, including $2.5 million for cold cases and sexual assault kits. The city helped clear the state's backlog of thousands of forgotten and untested kits in 2018. Kits continued to accumulate, and in 2024, the backlog came back. Police were waiting 8 months for kits to be tested and have hundreds in line. Without the funding, City Administrator Raymond Lee wrote in a filing, the programs would be significantly curtailed or eliminated.
Trump's picks win in pivotal Arizona primaries. The swing state is a roadmap for controlling the House. From Philip M. Bailey of USA Today, Representative Andy Biggs sailed to the Republican nomination for Arizona governor on July 21st, further solidifying President Trump's nearly perfect record in the 2026 GOP primaries. Now comes the more difficult task for the five-term conservative firebrand in his quest to defeat Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs, winning over needed independence without straying too far from the White House. Arizona is one of the most hotly contested swing states in the country, but in several Republican primaries this year, the experts have warned Trump-endorsed contenders will have a tougher time in the general election. Even some of Biggs' fellow Republicans cast the former House Freedom Caucus chair as too extreme to prevail over Hobbs. The governor's race had been rated as a toss-up by experts, but it's been tilted more in Hobbs' favor given Biggs' polarizing views, including his skepticism that President Joe Biden did not win the 2020 election. The Grand Canyon state will also be a roadmap for controlling the U.S. House of Representatives, where at least 3 Republican-held seats are being targeted by Democrats. Alex Culloden, a state representative from Scottsdale, seized the GOP nomination for Secretary of State. He's received widespread attention for claiming that U.S. elections, including those in Arizona, are unfair and rigged. And in a sign of the Trump administration's intent to spotlight concerns about voter integrity in the key swing state this fall, the Department of Justice sent federal monitors into the state on July the 21st. Here are the main takeaways from Tuesday's contest. Like many GOP primary victors this year, Biggs benefited from proximity to Trump, along with having one of the most conservative voting records on Capitol Hill.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today. on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:15.
Continuing, I hate to lose him from Congress. You know, I'm sort of torn with that, Trump said during a Phoenix rally hosted by Turning Point USA in April. I hate to lose him, but he'll be a great governor. That loyalty extended to the 5-term congressman voting against certifying the 2020 election results. But as polls showed, Biggs easily winning the primary. He began to pivot weeks ago in an attempt to win over independents and skeptical Republicans. In an interview ahead of the July 21st contest, Biggs emphasized working with the late Senator John McCain on closing an Amber Alert system loophole for Native American tribes. Excuse me. He also cites another 2018 proposal he co-sponsored with Republican Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat from New York, now the Democrats' minority leader, to require more reporting from lobbyists. I do have a record of reaching across the aisle and working with people to get important things done, Biggs told USA Today. The Biggs campaign said in a statement memo that it believes Hobbs is uniquely vulnerable, given the razor-thin margin she won the office in 2022. But as much as the president and his allies hope they can catapult a swing state Democratic governor out of office, forecasters have shifted their predictions from toss-up to leans Democratic. Biggs' role as a major player in the fake electoral scheme in 2020 will likely be relitigated during this election, which is setting up to be a major referendum on the president, whose unpopular initiatives, such as launching a war with Iran, has driven up gas prices. That has given up gas prices. Biggs has supported. I know this race is going to be close no matter what, because Arizona is a swing state, Hobbs, who won by less than 1 percentage point in 2022, told USA Today. I'm going to earn every vote by showing Arizonans how I'm putting what's best for the state ahead of partisan politics, lowering costs, securing the border, and bringing good-paying jobs here, and that's how I'll win this race. As Arizona voters were flocking to the ballot box, the Trump administration announced it was sending election monitors into polling sites in 3 counties on the lookout for election fraud. All citizens and only citizens should get out and vote in federal races today, feeling confident that the government is here to help. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Harmeet Dillon said in a July 21st post on X. Christopher Weber, director of the Voter Project at the University of Arizona, described the DOJ's decision to send election monitors into a state during an active primary as highly unusual. But Bill Gates, executive director of Arizona State University's Mechanics of Democracy Laboratory, said the practice was nothing new. Their presence has been a routine part of elections under administrations of both parties and has been intended to help ensure compliance with federal voting rights laws, he said. The DOJ's decision mirrored one made during the Biden administration when monitors were sent into 4 counties during the 2024 presidential election. Arizona elections officials told the USA Today network shortly before polls closed that it was business as usual and that nothing out of the ordinary had been reported to them. But the step also comes at a time when Democrats and their allies are increasingly nervous about Trump's demands to overhaul U.S. elections before the midterms and ongoing false claims about widespread election fraud. In a primetime address this month, the president made sweeping, inaccurate allegations about broad vulnerabilities with voting systems. Trump exaggerated the level of interference China made into the 2020 election, but mostly used the speech as a rallying cry for Congress to pass the Save America Act, a robust voting bill that would require proof of citizenship upon registering to vote. Arizona is the only state that requires proof of citizenship to register to vote in local and statewide elections, which it installed through a ballot initiative in the year 2004. Yet, in a July 7th letter to Arizona's Secretary of State, Dillon threatened prosecution to any election official who knowingly retains non-citizens on the state's voter rolls. Each week, the president's approval ratings appear to be getting weaker and weaker, with just 36% of Americans approving of his job performance. In a new Economist YouGov poll result released this week, But that doesn't guarantee good fortune for Democrats this fall. A Washington Post Ipsos poll from from July found they have just a 48% to 45% lead over Republicans on which party voters favor in the upcoming congressional elections. If the GOP wants to hold its slim House majority, that will mean defending many battleground seats, and 3 in Arizona are being targeted by Democrats. Chief among them is Arizona's first congressional district election to replace Republican David Schweikert, who lost a gubernatorial primary on July 21st to Biggs. Trump won that district, covering northeastern Maricopa County, by 3 percentage points in 2024. But Biden won it by 1.5 points in 2020. The president's choice is Republican Jay Feely, a former NFL Pro Bowl kicker seeking to capitalize on his name ID that helped him defeat former state representative Joe Chaplik and businessman John Trobaugh. Democrats are choosing between former state legislator Amish Shah and Marlene Galan Woods, a former TV news anchor endorsed by the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, the House Democrats' political arm. But with about 84% of precincts, Shah is leading Galan Woods by roughly 7 percentage points. The DCC also lists Arizona's 6th congressional district as a possible flip, where it hopes to unseat Republican Representative Juan Kiscomani, whose district Trump carried by less than 1 percentage point in 2024. Joanna Mendoza, a Marine Corps veteran, ran unopposed in the Democratic primary for that seat. Arizona's 2nd district, represented by Republican Representative Eli Crane, is also a Democratic target. Experts are less optimistic about their chances there, given Trump won the area by 15 percentage points 2 years ago. But political observers point out Democrat Jonathan Nez, a former Navajo Nation president, did outperform former Vice President Kamala Harris in the district. It is also noteworthy that amid a rising tide of more progressive Democrats defeating longtime incumbents, 4-term Representative Greg Stanton trounced activist Kay Newkirk, who leaned into opposing data centers, drawing the ire of big money artificial intelligence groups. Arizona's Secretary of State will be a critical post in the 2028 presidential race as the chief official responsible for maintaining the voter registration database and overseeing elections. That fall contest will once again be a proxy war about the 2020 contest, now that Republicans have chosen State Representative Alex Kolodin, a Scottsdale attorney, as their nominee. Kolodin was part of a legal team that sought to throw out mail-in ballots and stop Arizona's 11 electors from casting votes for Biden. He was sanctioned in 2023 by the state bar for his role in those suits. As a state legislator, he has offered up tighter voting rules, such as abolishing the state's early voter list. Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, the Democratic incumbent, defeated Republican Mark Finchem, a prominent Trump supporter, who denied Biden's win by more than 4 percentage points in 2022. During that race, Fontes ran as an outspoken democracy defender and has criticized Trump's ongoing fixation on that election 6 years ago, while resisting the administration's multiple efforts to obtain Arizona's voter rolls.
The internet likes Louisiana's John Kennedy. The homespun GOP senator is a star on social media. Jay Stahl of USA Today writes, Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana looked closely into his phone's selfie camera and then flipped the view around to reveal a lush oasis, his own backyard. This is another one of those silly videos my staff told me I needed to make, the 74-year-old junior senator said in a video posted June 17. Kennedy conceded, I don't know why on God's green earth anybody should care, before showing viewers his manicured grass, moisturized with the help of a sprinkler, and 2 patio umbrellas on an unstained deck. He proceeded to warn viewers around the world not to venture onto said lawn or they'd risk stepping in dog poo. Nearly 750,000 users do seem interested in Kennedy's whereabouts. The backyard video generated more than 1 million TikTok views. Now, he's the most followed Republican senator on TikTok, and he has 1.3 million Instagram followers, where his videos similarly go viral. The little-known Southern legislator, who shares the name of one of America's most famous presidents, endeared himself to the internet with candor and off-color humor. Recently, he introduced followers to his elliptical trainer, Margaret. Social media stardom could serve the Louisiana lawmaker well, as he considers a bid to succeed President Trump at the top of his party's 2028 ticket. Trump, of course, owns a social media platform, Truth Social, and before that he relied on X, formerly Twitter, to relay his thoughts and opinions. Trump and former Vice President Kamala Harris both used social media posts to appeal to younger voters during the 2024 election. Young men ultimately helped Trump win the race. Political leaders who are thinking long-term are actually very smart to appeal to young voters, knowing that once you start as an 18, 19, 20-year-old voting for one party, you're likely to do that for the rest of your life, according to Deborah Leiter, a political science professor at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. Kennedy has quietly become a potential White House contender. He told Katie Pavlich on News Nation that he is focused on the midterms and his reelection to the Senate, but wouldn't rule out a run. I've had some people talk to me about it. Doesn't mean I'm going to do it. But remember that song by the Judds? Why not me? Kennedy said. His book, How to Test Negative for Stupid and Why Washington Never Will, was released in October. It was a #1 New York Times bestseller. When asked on comedian Theo Von's podcast this past weekend whether he bears any relation to the famous Democratic Kennedy family, he said, "If I am, I'm the poor side of the family." Senator Kennedy's office did not respond to USA Today's request for comment about his social media popularity. Kennedy has amassed 4.8 million TikTok likes, dominating his peers on the platform. Senate Republicans often steer clear of TikTok. That's a Gen Z favorite that Kennedy and his colleagues once considered banning because of its ties to China. His only Republican contemporaries with verified accounts are Montana Senator Tim Sheehy, who has no videos on an account with fewer than 300 followers, and Texas Senator Ted Cruz, who is inching toward 24,000 followers. Cory Booker, Democrat from New Jersey, is the nation's most followed U.S. Senator on TikTok, 1.7 million followers. Now, Kennedy, a former Democrat, was the 5-term state treasurer of Louisiana. He was first elected treasurer in 1999, but switched parties and became a Republican in August of 2007, a year before President Obama won the White House. After 2 failed Senate bids, Kennedy won a 3rd contest in 2016, the same year Trump was elected to the Oval Office. In 2022, he was reelected, trouncing his main Democratic opponent by nearly 45 percentage points. In recent years, Kennedy has found fame online as fan accounts chronicled his cable news appearances on TikTok. One video posted last November featured a montage that captured his quick wit, earning 7 million TikTok views. A similar post from July, this past July, garnered 600,000. I'm not saying you're the dumbest person in the world, but you better hope the dumbest person in the world doesn't die, Kennedy once said on Fox News. He remarked in another clip, "I don't know why we have to give money to countries that hate us. They should be able to hate us for free." He dramatically joked to Fox's Martha McCallum, God, please don't give me patience. I'm sorry, God, please give me patience, because if you give me strength, I'm going to need some bail money. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:30. And continuing, one expert said online content featuring Kennedy resonates. He's authentic. April Eichmeyer, a professor of emerging media at the University of St. Thomas, Minnesota, said, the kind of backyard folksy, relatable, humorous John Kennedy, that kind of stuff, would have come out only in the Parade magazine on the weekends, some 30 years ago. We don't need to wait for that anymore, and it doesn't need to be filtered, she said. Scott Dunn, a political communications professor at Radford, told USA Today social media allows politicians like Kennedy to form parasocial relationships with their followers, effectively creating one-sided intimacy. The creation of a parasocial relationship is evident in Kennedy's content. In a recent viral video, he donned a backward ball cap and introduced followers to his 9-year-old dog, Charlie, who is part Maltese, part terrier. He noted that Charlie, who used to be owned by a homeless person, is muscular, sturdy, and compact. Charlie also serves as my wireless doorbell, especially when the UPS man or the Amazon man comes. He's forgotten how to do it a lot, but sometimes his memory comes back, and I can get him to walk 3 or 4 feet on his hind legs and beg, because that's what the homeless person taught him how to do. The Charlie introduction garnered 235,000 likes on TikTok. Eichmeyer, the emerging media professor, said Kennedy's humorous videos are an entry point to his politics. That's the place to get people interested in what you have to say and hope that they look somewhere else. In one of Kennedy's most popular videos, which has 3 million views and 478,000 likes, the legislator gave his followers the inside scoop about a beloved meal. He shared the recipe for his wife Becky's not-so-world-famous chicken salad. A jar of salad and 2 pieces of white bread were spread out on his marble-top kitchen island. This chicken salad is better than sex, Kennedy said, before he clarified. Not really, but you get the point.
Mm-hmm. Immigration arrests hit a record level, the DHS says. Data shows uptick despite shift in tactics. From Ignacio Calderon and Christopher Kahn of USA Today. After a 3-month-long delay, the longest in its recent history, the Department of Homeland Security on July 20th published detention numbers that show immigration enforcement grew again in the interior of the country under Secretary Mark Wayne Mullen. The figures show ICE arrests at a record level, with the number of people in detention increasing again, notably reversing a dip from detainees with no criminal record. The new data showing an uptick in enforcement activity follows backlash over recent fatal shootings, one in Texas and one in Maine, then again thrust the agency into the national spotlight. Earlier in 2026, the agency's high-profile operations in multiple cities led to calls for more accountability and transparency in immigration enforcement and a months-long stalemate over the agency's funding. Ariel Ruiz Soto, a senior policy analyst at the Migration Policy Institute, said the new numbers point to a change in immigration tactics, but with similar results as before. The previous tactics were more visual, were more publicly controversial. They were more targeted in places and cities that were pushing against the Trump administration, Ruiz Soto said. Now the strategy is less visible, at least until the recent death, but the outcomes haven't really changed significantly if you look at the bigger picture. Ruiz Soto pointed to the share of people detained without a criminal record, which has grown the most of any group under the second Trump administration, staying roughly even during Mullen's first months. The new numbers show the average daily number of people booked into detention from ICE arrests reached over 1,300 in June, a 32% increase since April, Mullen's first full month. It's also the highest of any month going back to 2021, according to a USA Today compilation of historical files. While the increase is significant, the pace of removals has stayed roughly flat, with the total number of people in detention increasing after the reversal that followed the deadly shootings in Minneapolis in January. A DHS spokesperson said in an email the agency has been delivering on President Trump's promise to arrest and deport people with a criminal record. The spokesperson pointed to most ICE arrests being from people charged or convicted of a crime. The latest data shows detainees from ICE arrests without a criminal record made up 37% of the detained population, compared with the 6% in January of 2025. Data published July the 20th marked over 100 days since the last update in April, pushing the average time between releases so far this year to 42 days, nearly 3 times the historical schedule. Through 2025, Trump's first year back in office, and the 4 years before, ICE had been relatively consistent about publishing data roughly every 2 weeks, following a congressional mandate to do so. We were flying in the dark for months. That's a long time to really not know what the strategy was and what the administration was doing. And so it's welcome that they finally got around to putting this out here, said David Beer, Director of Immigration Studies at the Cato Institute. The questions about transparency linger on other fronts too. The recent back-to-back shootings have raised questions about why the agents were not wearing body cameras, despite a promise by federal authorities to equip officers nationwide with the technology. In response, White House Border Czar Tom Homan on July 19th said ICE will require its officers to record vehicle stops with at least one body camera. DHS typically publishes additional data sets that dive into the other aspects of immigration enforcement in more detail, such as arrests and deportations. However, the agency hasn't updated those since the end of 2024, making the detention management data released July 20th the last accountability tool to track immigration enforcement, such as how many are detained and the share of people with and without a criminal record. It also tracks detention bookends, which closely match arrests, but do not contain information like the location and if a local law enforcement agency was involved.
According to officials, Honduran couples were drowned in the Ohio River. 5 died after trying to rescue a swimmer. Tao Nguyen of USA Today writes, two married couples from Honduras were among the 5 people who drowned in an Ohio river, Honduran officials said on July the 21st, as authorities worked to identify the remaining victims and arrange the return of the bodies. Flavia Zamora, Director General of Consular Affairs at the Honduran Foreign Ministry, identified 2 of the victims as Jose Mario Pineda Diaz, 33 years of age, and his wife Marina Suyapa Regalado, age 29. A second couple from Honduras also died in the incident, but authorities are still awaiting official confirmation of the identities. The 5th victim was a Salvadoran national, Zamora said during a news conference July 21. The 5 victims drowned July 19 along the O'Shaughnessy Reservoir in the Scioto River, according to the Delaware County Sheriff's Office. They were part of a group that had gathered in the area to enjoy themselves on a summer night, including doing some fishing. This from Delaware County Sheriff Jeffrey Bowser. Investigators believe 1 person entered the water to swim, but began struggling. 2 others went into the river to help, and they also started to struggle in the river. 2 more people then entered the water in an apparent rescue attempt. That's when the tragedy started to occur. Bowser said during a news conference on July 20, up to 5 people possibly went into the river. The Scioto River is a river in central and southern Ohio. The O'Shaughnessy Reservoir area is located in the city of Powell, a suburb of the state capital of Columbus. A preliminary investigation revealed that the group may have consisted of 2 sets of parents, 2 children, and at least 1 additional person, according to Balzer. Zamora confirmed that the group was at the river on the afternoon of July 19, and 2 men had entered the water to help a person struggling to swim. Their wives then went into the river to help, but all 5 of them drowned. A driver called 911 shortly after 9 p.m. local time, July 19, after spotting a distraught child running along State Route 257 near the O'Shaughnessy Reservoir. The child told the driver that family members were in the river. First responders rushed to the scene and pulled 2 women from the water. They were transported to area hospitals where they were pronounced dead. Recovery crews resumed searching July 20 and later found the bodies of the 3 men. The children who were on shore, all under the age of 10, and a language barrier, which made it difficult for authorities to get information from most of them. The children were placed in the care of Delaware County Job and Family Services. Zamora said Honduran officials are in contact with relatives of the victims and are working with U.S. authorities to repatriate the victims' bodies. The repatriation process could take at least a month. We are already in contact with their relatives and are explaining the process that must be followed for the repatriation process. A relative of Diaz, who lives in the United States, is assisting with the arrangements, according to Zamora. The Associated Press reported that Brenda Rea, who identified herself as a relative of the victims, started a GoFundMe campaign to help cover funeral and transportation expenses and support the 2 children left orphaned by the tragedy. Rea said the children are 8 and 10 years of age, according to the Associated Press.
Wells family releases autopsy results. Cause and the manner of teen's death is undetermined. From James Powell and Melina Khan of USA Today. Preliminary findings from an independent autopsy of Nolan Xavier Wells found the 18-year-old died of undetermined causes, his family attorney announced on July the 22nd. The autopsy, which was conducted by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell and paid for by former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, also found Wells' manner of death as undetermined, civil rights attorney Ben Crump said at a news conference. Wells, a football player at Southwest Mississippi Community College, was reported missing after he did not return from a 4th of July trip with friends to Mississippi's Horn Island. Authorities recovered his body on July the 6th. The teen's death has garnered widespread attention from public figures, including Nancy Grace, as Wells' family has raised questions about his disappearance. Bailey C. Martin, a spokesperson for the Mississippi Department of Public Safety, previously confirmed that the state medical examiner's office had conducted an autopsy of Wells, and the results would be released to the local coroner's office. The results of the medical examiner's autopsy have not yet been made public. USA Today has reached out to the Mississippi Department of Public Safety for comment on the independent autopsy findings. Wells' cause and manner of death are both undetermined pending further investigation, Mitchell wrote in his report. The independent autopsy was conducted on July the 10th after the state medical examiner's initial autopsy, according to Crump. Among the notable findings from Mitchell's report was an area of red discoloration on tissue at the back of Wells' head by the occipital bone. We actually saw the picture of it. It's significant. You can't help but notice, why is this dark red here in the back of his head, Crump said. Mitchell wrote that the cause of death is undetermined, in part because of the lack of details around the circumstances of Wells' death, such as how the teen may have entered the water and how exactly his body was found. Because of the body's decomposition and the fact that an initial autopsy had already been conducted, Mitchell said he was unable to fully examine Wells' airway and stomach. In addition, Mitchell said he did not have Wells' toxicology results, which would be a major factor for his findings. Mitchell also said in his report that he received Wells' body without portions of the neck and throat. Mitchell said he assumed that these portions of the body were retained by the medical examiner for additional evaluation, which is a common practice.
You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 12:45.
Continuing, the Jackson County Sheriff's Office has said investigators have not found signs of foul play and its investigation continues. However, speculation around Wells' death has intensified as photos and video allegedly connected to the case have circulated. Crump has said Wells' family does not accept that the teen could have accidentally drowned given he was a strong swimmer. Once the Sheriff's Office concludes its investigation, the case will be handed to Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McElrath and presented to a grand jury. This is a standard procedure for unnatural deaths in Jackson County and is not necessarily an indication that a crime was committed or is suspected. At a July 20th funeral service for Wells, his mother, Christine Wells Wansley, and his father, Elmore Wansley Sr., described their son as having a gentle, calming spirit. The Mississippi Clarion Ledger, part of the USA Today Network, reported, "Your absence has left an emptiness that can never truly be filled. A piece of our hearts will always be missing," Christine Wells Wansley said. "Nolan, we love you." The funeral service, which was funded by filmmaker and actor Tyler Perry, drew high-profile attendees, including Spike Lee and former NFL star Terrell Owens. The Reverend Al Sharpton, who officiated the service, announced a $50,000 reward for information leading to an arrest or conviction in Wells' case that he said Perry would match, bringing it up to $100,000. On July 21st, Owens said he'll give another $25,000. Crump urged anyone with information about the case to call 888-991-1772. Much of the family's unease centers on Wells' cell phone, which his friends had after he went missing, Sharpton said at a July 10th news conference. When it was returned, Wells Wansley said recent Snapchat activity appeared to have been erased faster than the app's normal expiration window. The family also was aware of a recorded argument on the island involving Wells shortly before he went missing. Sharpton and Crump said on July the 10th. One of Wells' friends who was with him that day, Trey Seston Shepard, disputed that Wells appeared in the video in comments to ABC News. Crump said the family has concerns about whether Mississippi authorities can provide what they view as a fair and transparent investigation during a July the 10th news conference. Sharpton called for a full and thorough investigation at the funeral.
Moving into the money section, Wegovy maker sues rival Eli Lilly. The weight loss drugs ads at center of legal dispute. Ken Altucker of USA Today writes, Novo Nordisk has sued Eli Lilly over what Novo said is false and misleading advertising, comparing the effectiveness of the drugs company's respective injectable weight loss medicines. The lawsuit, filed July 21 in U.S. District Court in New Jersey, contends Lilly's ads are deliberately simple and deliberately false because they tout outdated clinical trials that compare the highest doses of Lilly medications to lower doses of Novo Nordisk's medicines. Novo said the ads are deceptive because they present results as proof of broad product-level superiority while burying or omitting critical clinical context. John Kuckelman, Novo's senior vice president and group general counsel, said, Lilly's ads have misled consumers. What's really in focus here is a nationwide pattern of deceptive advertising, where campaigns are misleading people with obesity and diabetes by comparing the highest doses of Lilly's medicines with lower doses of Novo's medicines. The patients are left with the misleading impression that Lilly's drugs are superior to Novo's. A spokesperson for Lilly said the company plans to vigorously fight the lawsuit. Novo Nordisk isn't asking Lilly to stop selling the blockbuster weight loss and diabetes medications. Rather, Novo is asking a judge to issue a permanent order requiring Lilly to pull its comparison ads across all platforms. It also wants the court to order Lilly to conduct a corrective advertising campaign. The lawsuit comes as the two pharmaceutical companies are engaged in an intense battle over the market for popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs, which are mainly prescribed to treat obesity and type 2 diabetes. Although Novo was the first on the market with its anti-obesity medication, Wegovy, Lilly's sales for the weight loss drug Zepbound, have surged. Zepbound sales reached nearly $4.2 billion in the first 3 months of this year. That's an increase of 80% from the year before. Analysts expect the weight loss sector to generate about $100 billion in annual sales over the next 10 years. More than half a dozen pharmaceutical companies are developing new versions of weight loss drugs in the competitive markets. Now, both companies could benefit from millions of older adults who now might qualify for popular GLP-1 weight loss drugs under a new Medicare pilot program. On July 1, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services launched the Medicare GLP-1 Bridge program for enrollees who qualify for prescription weight loss medication based on height, weight, and other criteria. Medicare enrollees must pay a monthly $50 copay, and Medicare will cover the rest. Now, a Lilly television commercial compared the company's weight loss drugs, stating that people using Lilly's Zepbound lost an average 50 pounds compared with an average 33 pounds for Wegovy's 2.4 milligram dose, according to the lawsuit. The suit also said that the commercial did not share results from a clinical trial that showed patients on a higher dose of Wegovy lost an average of 47 pounds. The Food and Drug Administration approved the higher 7.2 milligram dose of Wegovy in March of this year. There have been no clinical trials directly comparing the 7.2 milligram Wegovy to the higher dose Zepbound. An earlier trial called SURMOUNT-5 compared Zepbound 10 and 15 milligram doses against Wegovy's 1.7 and 2.4 milligram doses. In a statement, Lilly spokesperson Michael Jamieson said, "The gold standard is to compare medicines in a head-to-head clinical trial, just like SURMOUNT. Rather than compete on the merits of its products, Novo is asking a court to stop Lilly from communicating the results of that SURMOUNT trial. We stand firmly behind our advertising. It is truthful, transparent, and grounded in the most direct scientific evidence available, exactly what patients deserve. We will continue to focus on the science and defend against this lawsuit vigorously." Now, the lawsuit said Lilly used the same misleading approach in ads comparing the company's diabetes drugs, Lilly's Mounjaro and Novo's Ozempic. Novo said the ads compared higher dose versions of Mounjaro to lower dose versions of Ozempic, even when a higher dose version of Ozempic was available. Novo said Lilly's ads have harmed its business. Their false and misleading advertising diverts patient demand and prescriptions from Novo Nordisk's medicines to Lilly's medicines, according to the lawsuit.
Retired couples may lose $16,900 a year. Cut in benefits to come if Congress does not act. From Medora Lee of USA Today, newly retired average dual-income couples planning to retire in 6 years should expect to receive $16,900 less in annual Social Security benefits if Congress continues to do nothing to shore up the funds used to pay beneficiaries, according to the nonpartisan Nonprofit Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget, which is CRFB, a think tank. The trust fund that supplements incoming payroll taxes to pay monthly Social Security benefits is expected to run dry by the end of 2032, according to the program's trustees. When that happens, the law requires benefits to be reduced by an estimated 22% to ensure the program's costs do not exceed its revenues. That's when today's 61-year-olds will reach their normal retirement age, and when today's youngest retirees will turn 68. Social Security's insolvency is no longer a crisis for future lawmakers to deal with, CRFB's report said. Senators elected this year will be in office when Social Security's retirement fund is exhausted. Why is the financial advisor expanding? I'm sorry, I picked the wrong article. Is a 22% Social Security cut the worst of it? The longer Congress sits on its hands, the worse it will get for Social Security recipients, the analyst said. These cuts are projected to grow over time due to the rising gap between Social Security's costs and dedicated revenues, according to CRFB. At the end of the century, annual benefit cuts are expected to reach 35%. Now, what can Congress do for Social Security? A bipartisan group of senators introduced legislation this week to fast-track any Social Security savings bills. A bipartisan 7-member Social Security Advisory Board would draft a bill to keep the program's trust funds solvent at least through the next half-century and be introduced in the House and Senate by congressional leaders before being considered by committees, which could hold hearings and revise the legislation. To become law, the bill would still need 60 votes in the Senate and a majority vote in the House. Though analysts applauded the bill, the board still needs to develop a plan, even though ideas aren't in short supply right now. For years, analysts have floated many ideas, but none have gained traction. Ideas range from boosting the payroll tax that helps fund Social Security to raising the full retirement age. CRFB this year proposed a $100,000 ceiling on the total annual Social Security benefit for a couple at full retirement age and a $50,000 limit for a single retiree starting this year. Former Social Security Administration Commissioner Martin O'Malley said lawmakers should raise the cap on earnings subject to Social Security payroll taxes rather than pursue benefit reductions.
You're listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, July the 23rd, 2026, on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. We will return for more readings after the short break. Your readers today,
Jim Duffy
and Ken Drost.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's USA Today. Your readers are
Ken Trost
and Jim Duffy. And turning to our sports page, complex contracts hold up rookie quarterback signings from Tyler Dragon of USA Today. Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson, Carson Beck, and Drew Allar were the top 4 quarterbacks selected in the 2026 NFL Draft. As rookies continue to report to training camp across the NFL, all 4 quarterbacks remain unsigned. Each quarterback is in a different situation. The Las Vegas Raiders appear poised to take a cautious approach with Mendoza this season. The Raiders are likely to start Kirk Cousins at quarterback while Mendoza watches and learns. Simpson was drafted to a loaded Los Angeles Rams roster and will compete for the team's backup quarterback job behind reigning NFL MVP Matthew Stafford. Beck is in the midst of a quarterback competition in the desert. Beck, Jacoby Brissett, and Gardner Minshew are in a battle to be quarterback number 1 for the Arizona Cardinals. In Pittsburgh, Allar is in competition for a backup job behind Aaron Rodgers. Now, why are the top 4 quarterbacks unsigned? It's not a huge surprise. Mendoza, Simpson, Beck, and Allar are unsigned. Quarterback contracts are typically a little more complex, even though some rookie contracts are slotted and predetermined. Mendoza, who was picked number 1, has a contract value of $57.2 million. Simpson's, which was picked number 13, contract is worth $25.4 million. Beck, with pick number 65, has a contract valued at $7.4 million. And Allar, with pick number 76, is set to earn $7.1 million, according to Over the Cap. Quarterbacks tend to have more leverage to negotiate certain terms in their rookie contracts. Signing bonus, cash flow, guaranteed money details, and offset language are negotiable terms in rookie contracts. Mendoza's signing bonus is what stalled the quarterback from signing his rookie deal. A person familiar with the situation told USA Today Sports. They spoke on the condition of anonymity because they are not authorized to discuss such deals. According to Joel Corey of CBS Sports, Mendoza's side wants his signing bonus payment to be in a single lump sum. Single lump sum payments have become customary for number 1 overall picks. The last number 1 pick who did not receive their signing bonus in a single lump sum payment was Kyler Murray when he was drafted number 1 overall by the Arizona Cardinals in 2019. A person familiar with the Raiders process told USA Today Sports their standard practice is paying signing bonuses in installments. The person spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter. The Raiders prefer not to break precedent. However, Mendoza's side is opposed to starting a new precedent because number 1 picks have had their signing bonus payment in a single lump sum in recent years. The top 4 quarterbacks could be waiting for each other to sign as a leverage tactic. Mendoza and Simpson are first-round picks. First-round picks have had their contracts guaranteed in recent years. It's worth noting Simpson, Beck, and Allar are represented by agents part of the Creative Arts Agency, CAA, while Mendoza is represented by an agent in Excel Sports Management. They are 100% waiting on Mendoza. Every other team is waiting to see what they do, a person familiar with the situation told USA Today. And again, they spoke on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity of the matter. That's how it goes. Unsigned rookies are not permitted to participate in training camp.
Alabama star receiver's jersey. Name a better fit. Blake Topmeyer, columnist for USA Today Network, writes, his name did not change. Not exactly, but the jersey nameplate got a lot longer. Fitting 16 characters onto the back of a uniform wouldn't be tough for a hulking lineman, but for the lithe wide receiver like Alabama's Ryan Coleman Williams, them letters are going to have to be extra small, Coleman Williams joked during an exclusive interview with USA Today last spring. But they're going to know who I am, it's okay. Anyway, adding Coleman to his jersey is worth any font size adjustment. Coleman Williams played his first 2 years at Alabama as Ryan Williams. So why the name change? Well, that's where Coleman Williams corrects you. It's always been my name, he said. I never didn't have it. It's been on my birth certificate since I was born. Literally, the jersey is the only thing that changed. That's right, the Coleman isn't new, just new to the uniform. As reported by the Athletic earlier this year, his birth certificate reads Ryan Alexander Coleman Williams. That name honors his mom, Tiffany Coleman, and his dad, Ryan Williams Sr. So, why did Ryan Coleman Williams change his name on Alabama jersey? Coleman Williams had always worn Williams on his jersey, but last year he started to more seriously mull a change. Nick Saban spoke to the team during a meeting last summer, and he asked Alabama's players to consider what they wanted their legacy to be. That legacy question from the GOAT lingered on Coleman Williams' mind. It influenced his decision to opt for a uniform nameplate change ahead of his junior season. It was like, it's time for me to start my own legacy and put the Coleman Williams on the back, Coleman Williams told me. No one else has Coleman Williams. You'll see a Coleman and you'll see a Williams, but nobody's got Coleman Williams. It's just starting my legacy for my family. What did Mom think of the adjustment? She loved it, Coleman Williams said. So did his grandfather, Michael Coleman. Now, actually, my granddad, I'm the last male with the last name Coleman. So if I didn't use Coleman, it would have been over, Coleman Williams said. Now, that was another reason as well. So the jersey says Coleman Williams now. Or you can call him RCW. And RCW wears number 1. After 2 seasons wearing a deuce on his back, Coleman Williams switched to the number 1 he wore in high school. I wanted to get back to me wearing number 1. That's what I felt the most explosive, he said. No matter the nameplate or the number, Alabama needs RCW at his best. Now, this isn't the Alabama of yore, when it stockpiled so much blue-chip talent that its backups could outperform most opponents' starters. In this era of name, image, and likeness, and transfer free agency spreading out talent in ways that didn't happen in Saban's dynasty, the Crimson Tide need their stars to be stars. RCW is a star, or at least he possesses star ability. We've seen it. At just 17 years of age, he introduced himself to the nation and spurred Alabama with 177 receiving yards in a takedown of number 1 Georgia. He became a freshman All-American selection and entered last season as one of the cover stars of EA Sports college football video game. He faced whopper expectations. His performance stalled. He dealt with multiple injuries, including a concussion in the season opener and a leg injury later in the fall. He developed a case of the drops. He had just one 100-yard receiving game. Now, that sophomore season was tough on him mentally, he told me, and he just felt alone at times. The university did a great job, and my coaches did a great job of pulling me out of that, Coleman Williams said. But there were definitely a lot of lessons I learned last season, like just keeping the main thing. I know it's a cliche, but it's real. Coleman Williams speaks like a team leader who's been through the fires, but it's still a bit jarring to hear. Alabama coach Kalen DeBoer described him as the veteran of the offense. After all, he's still a teenager. He won't turn 20 until after this season. By that time, he'll have played Georgia and faced Kirby Smart's defense at least 4 times. He has more snaps as a college football player here at Alabama than anybody else on this offense, DeBoer pointed out. Now, even though his stats regressed last season, DeBoer said Coleman Williams' work ethic never wavered. He describes him as the ultimate team player. That's handy, but Alabama also needs him to be the ultimate weapon as well, especially if Alabama leans on its pass game anywhere near as much as it did last season when the Crimson Tide led the SEC in passes. Alabama will have a new starting quarterback. Two of their top three wide receivers are gone. Coleman Williams is the exception. But despite the exits, DeBoer pointed to the wide receivers as a position group that could be better. That starts with RCW, the player who now has a longer nameplate, a skinnier number, and the urge to build a legacy. It's kind of like a new him, name and number, DeBoer said. Not like he needed a change, but I think it's the next part of his growth and evolution.
Barkley's Super Bowl motivation might surprise you. From Chris Boombaka of USA Today. If there is one game Saquon Barkley wants back, it's Super Bowl 59. The Philadelphia Eagles throttled the Kansas City Chiefs 40-22 last year in a game that wasn't as close as the final score indicated. Barkley, however, had 25 carries for 57 yards, a paltry showing compared to his record-setting season in which he rushed for 2,005 yards during the regular season, added 443 in the three playoff games, and scored 21 touchdowns by the time the confetti fell on the Eagles in New Orleans. Last season ended with a home wild card loss to the San Francisco 49ers after a second straight NFC East title, but a much more pedestrian campaign for the offense. So that's a motivation for me. Try to get back to that game, Barkley told USA Today Sports in an exclusive interview on July 15th. That's why I train the way I train. I would love to have had a faster start last year, but you can't get caught up in the stats. You can't get too caught up in numbers. Some of my better years weren't based off numbers. It was based off how I handled myself in certain situations. Barkley rushed for more than 100 yards in a game 3 times, twice in the final 4 weeks of the regular season, and again in the playoffs last season, which was down from 14 instances, including the playoffs, in 2024, as the Eagles' offense sputtered. Injuries along the offensive line exacerbated an inefficient running game. Kevin Patullo, the former offensive coordinator, took the fall and was reassigned at the end of the season and left the organization. Despite the finish, Barkley felt his best games came in the back half of 2025. That has him feeling confident, especially with Sean Mannion taking over as offensive coordinator. For me personally, it's not always stats, because every game presents a different challenge. Did I have better stats in the last 5 games? Yes, Barkley said. I just felt like how I was running the ball, how I was breaking tackles. I just feel like I get stronger as the season goes on. That's why I think statistically in Philly's history, I'm one of the better playoff running backs. Winning the Super Bowl is the only thing that matters on the field for Barkley. Once achieved, it's time to do it again, which is the challenge Barkley and the Eagles are pursuing after falling off the mountain ship last year. There is going to be 1 winner and 31 losers, Barkley said, and the losers are all the same. Barkley spoke to USA Today Sports while promoting his new advertising campaign with DirecTV, which is a play on his famous backward hurdle over a would-be tackler in the 2024 Week 9 game against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The spot features Barkley. Okay, it's actually a stunt double performing various hurdles. Looking back on the play 2 years later, Barkley said he never thought it would continue to carry this much cultural relevance. When I got to the locker room and got to see the play, I realized I was able to do something pretty cool. It's something. It's a play I'll never forget, but I also don't want to be remembered for that play. I'm happy I was able to make that play, but I'm ready for the next one. Barkley also spoke to USA Today about Mannion, his former teammate A.J. Brown, who is now with the New England Patriots, recruiting LeBron James to join the 76ers, and more. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:15. Continuing. Question. USA Today. Commercials are nothing for you. What makes this one special? From Barkley, this one is different. Shout out to my stunt double. He took a lot of load off me, to be completely honest. But it was pretty cool just how I was able to see it in real time. They were showing me, excuse me, they were showing me how they were going to create this, do that. But I kind of like acting a little bit. You get to see how the movie's made. You see this set and scene and you're like, how did they do all that? They had me do something so little and it transferred to something pretty cool. But that was awesome. Also, just spending a day with DirecTV and seeing what they're about. I've been a fan a long time, but this is my first time working with DirecTV. I hope people can enjoy the spot. Next, what about that creative process excites you? As I get older and start thinking about other stuff I want to do in my career, it's kind of cool just to see how the movie is made, how the spot is made. It's a lot of hard work, everything. I'm a cornball when it comes to this, but everything comes down to a team. It takes a great team to accomplish everything you want to. If you want to be successful in football, if you want to be successful in life, if you want to be successful in the direct TV spot, it takes a team. It takes a stunt double. It takes a producer. It takes a cameraman. It takes multiple takes. Even if you think you get it in one take, I've learned, you're going to have to do a little bit more. But just being involved in it is pretty cool. What have been your impressions of Sean Mannion? You get to respect a man that's super smart. That's something that you can see from the start. He loves football. He's young. He has the opportunity of a lifetime, and I feel like he's going to take advantage of the opportunity. I'm excited for him. I don't want to get too much in the X's and O's. I think not only for me as a player, but for our offense. He's going to bring out the best of us. We're all buying into something new. I'm a big believer. I was able to get a fresh start and see what this was able to do for my career. It's the same thing. You get a fresh start with everybody. It's a new system. We all got to learn and adapt. We're all winning and able to do. How would you describe A.J. Brown as a teammate? I think A.J. Brown is one of my favorite teammates, one of my favorite people I've ever been around. Kids will come up to me and say, how do you feel about A.J. getting traded? I'm going to miss him. I feel that way for any teammate we lose. A.J. is a heck of a player, heck of a man. He's going to be missed, but that's football. You got to adapt. I'm happy for him. He's at a spot he likes, and I know he's been a Patriot fan for a long time. He's got to do what's best for him and his family, and we got to do what's best for us. What does it mean to be a part of a group of elite running backs? It's an honor to be part of that group. It's a lot of those guys that I respect. We're competitive. We're all competitive. I want everyone to do well. I just want to be the best, but I also want to be the best by winning a championship. So whatever that means, however that looks, at the end of the day, if we're holding the Lombardi Trophy, it's a win for me. And any message for LeBron to join the Sixers? I missed out on this. Some of the best golf in the world. I'm probably a 7 or 8 handicap, probably 8. You're going to get some good golf. I know he's into the golf thing. He's a little addicted. Welcome to the family. That would probably be my last pitch to him.
And speaking of Caitlin Clark, Nancy Armour, columnist for USA Today, writes, time to stop pretending Clark's flops are harmless. The Indiana Fever All-Star, Caitlin Clark, and her enablers must take the rest of us for idiots. The fouls they claim occurred, the contusion she says she suffered, the technicals that are not deserved. Clark doesn't suddenly become invisible when she's involved in physical play, so we can see what actually happened, which is that Clark is flopping, and her histrionics while doing so are putting other people in danger. Now, before you start howling and going on about the eyeballs Clark has brought to the WNBA and women's basketball, I'm not a Clark hater. She can be an electrifying player. Her Player of the Week honor is richly deserved after she went off for a combined 75 points in her last 3 games, and she has been the gateway drug to women's sports fandom for millions of people. That, however, does not entitle her to a free pass. Twice in the last 2 weeks, Clark has raged over non-calls and spun a narrative easily debunked by video of the actual game. First, she tried to sell a foul on Chelsea Gray in the Indiana Fever's July 12th game against the Las Vegas Aces. The two did have contact as Gray was driving to the basket, but it was minimal. No different than what's seen dozens of times in every WNBA game. NBA games, too, for that matter. And yet, Clark collapsed to the ground as if she'd been hit in the stomach with a battering ram, and then yelled at the refs, demanding a foul. They reviewed it and saw what everyone else had. No foul. Barely any contact. 3 days later, against the Golden State Valkyries, Clark said she got kneed in the quad by Kia Stokes as Caitlin drove to the basket. Clark was livid no foul was called, dropping an F-bomb as she yelled at the referee. "I got kneed in the quad. That hurts," Clark said after the game. "The ref can't miss that. Then I have to play with a constitution. I'm sorry. Then I have to play with a contusion in my leg the rest of the game. That's ridiculous. You can't miss calls like that." Yet, once again, replays clearly showed if there was contact, minimal. So, let's call it what it is. Flopping. Clark is hardly the only athlete to do that. We just finished a World Cup where players routinely acted as if they needed an emergency amputation, only to pop right back up and continue playing. It's been a staple of James Harden's career, was in Vlad Divac's too. But just as Clark's flops don't occur behind closed doors, they don't occur in a vacuum either. It seems there is a white nationalist element to Clark's fandom that is deeply, deeply problematic, made even more so because the WNBA is made up predominantly of black women, many of them queer. When Clark claims fouls that don't exist, when she goes on profanity-laced tirades at referees, those racists see her as a white woman in need of saving and take matters into their own hands. Gray posted just one of the messages she got following the Fever game, in which a man called her a racial slur. After fans identified the man, he was fired by his employer, Hilton Grand Vacations. "Enough is kind of enough," Gray said on July 15. "These messages are not the first of its kind. There was other stuff too. It was just time. I got fed up with it, and I just decided to share it." It shouldn't need reminding this country has an awful history of black people being harmed, even killed, in the name of defending white women. The WNBA's All-Star game this weekend is in Chicago, Emmett Till's hometown, and a local art gallery is currently hosting an exhibit, imagining his life if he had not been lynched. While it's incumbent on the WNBA to do more to protect its players, there also should be an expectation on Clark to recognize the wider consequences of her actions. The officiating in the WNBA needs to be better, no question. And nobody is expecting Clark to be a punching bag. But the W is a physical league and always has been. Clark draws fouls not because players are jealous or out to get her, but because her three-point shot and passing ability means defenders have to pick her up from the baseline. Don't, and she'll make you pay. The same defensive principle applies to Sabrina Ionescu and Paige Buckers, by the way, and will to Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo when they get in the league. Again, I'm not a Clark hater. She's great for the league and for women's sports. She'll be even better when she cuts out the Oscar auditions.
Scheffler adds 3M for the first time. from Adam Schupak of Golf Week and the USA Today Network. Scotty Scheffler is taking a page out of the Bill Belichick playbook. He's moving on to the 3M Open, jet lag be damned. I made it to my alarm this morning. Yesterday I was up like at 3:45, he said, on July 22nd during his pre-tournament press conference. Today I woke up for my 4:15 alarm, so that was definitely better. After finishing tied for fourth at the British Open Championship at Royal Birkdale, Scheffler isn't wasting any time reflecting on what could have been. No, I definitely haven't done that already. During the year, I just get pretty into the competition. So, like with the cadence of the schedule, it really is kind of 1 week to the next. I always do my best to kind of live in the present, so I wouldn't say I reflect a whole lot, he said. Right now, this week, we're in Minnesota, and I spent the last day and a half kind of getting ready for this tournament. Scheffler said he thinks this is his first trip to the land of 10,000 lakes, and certainly his first time teeing it up at the 3M Open. It's a big deal for a tournament in its 8th season on the PGA Tour that has struggled to attract the top players in its usual date following the end of the major season, but before the FedEx Cup playoffs heat up. This year, however, there is an extra tournament between the 3M and the first playoff event in Memphis. And so tournament organizers, who have been wooing Scheffler for the last few years and applied the full court press beginning in October, they got their man. I didn't really want to have 3 weeks off before the playoffs, Scheffler said. This was a tournament that I had heard a lot of good things about, and so far everything seems true. The people have been tremendous. The fans have been really nice to me so far, and the tournament seems to do a really good job just taking care of everybody. Scheffler has proved to be quite the draw. He's the first world number one to play the 3M Open since Brooks Koepka in 2019, and the buzz around the tournament because of Scheffler has been unrivaled, said tournament director Tracy West. Ticket sales have surged by 25% as of Tuesday and are still climbing. Even tournament title sponsor 3M blew through its allotment of tickets for the first time and had to buy more. On Tuesday, kids were scurrying about for best positioning to get autographs, and the cart taking Scheffler to the range stopped on multiple occasions so he could pose for selfies with fans of all ages. On Wednesday, Scheffler played 9 holes with Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell in the Pro-Am. When he tees off on Thursday at 8:29 a.m. Eastern Time, Scheffler will be a heavy favorite to get back into the winner's circle. He won his season debut at the American Express in January, notching his 20th career PGA Tour title, but he's gone 178 days since his last win. In the last 4 years, he'd never gone longer than 28 days between his first and second victories of the season. Still, he has led the FedEx Cup standings the last 5 weeks, the longest stretch of any player on the tour this season. And this week marks 144th career week inside the top 10, or 60 more than Colin Morikawa, the next most of any player currently in the top 10. Scheffler takes great pride in consistency. Another indication of that steady, reliable play is his cumulative total score at the majors, 20 under, tied for the best with Sam Burns this major season. A year after winning 2 of the 4 majors, Scheffler struck out, finishing second at the Masters, tied for 14th at the PGA Championship, and tied for 4th at both the U.S. Open and British Open. Asked to name which one frustrated him the most, he said, all 4 of them. It's been a season of so many close calls. He recorded his 10th top 5 finish in 16 starts on tour this season, the most by any player, with the next best being Matt Fitzpatrick with 7, and his 5 runner-up finishes on tour this season are tied for the most of any player in a season in the ShotLink era, with Cameron Young in 2022 and Vijay Sai in 2003. I still feel like my name's in a good spot, and I've played some nice golf. I haven't played any great golf yet, but I've played some nice golf over the course of the season, he said. I think if you took a blind look at some of my results, I think a lot of people would say that's a really good season. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 1:30. Continuing, if Scheffler did reflect on what prevented him from defending his Open title, he'd likely settle on his bulky putter. For a 59-hole stretch from the 7th hole Thursday through the 11th, Scheffler failed to make a single birdie putt of 7 feet or longer. He ranked 60th of the 78 players to make the cut. For the season, he ranks 14th in strokes gained, putting, the best performance of his career. So he said it's not something he's going to dwell on. There's always ebbs and flows. I think when you look at links, golf, and the conditions of the greens last week, I think you can see how the ball's rolling. There was some activity there, he said. The fans of 3M are delighted he decided to be here this season, and even his competitors embrace the challenge of going head-to-head with the world number one. Everyone wants to hit it like him, but no one has a swing like he swings it, said defending 3M Open champion Kurt Kitayama. I think his whole demeanor and the mental side of it, how he handles the pressure, I think is something to admire.
Wheeler takes out all. Wheeler, let's try that again. Wheeler takes out all-star snub on the opposition. Bob Nightingale, columnist for USA Today, writes, Philadelphia Phillies ace Zach Wheeler is not ready to make any announcement. He wants to wait until next year before deciding for sure. But remember those original plans of returning to health this year, pitching one final season in 2027, and then sailing off into the sunset with his family, calling it a career? Well, ever so quietly, those plans are on hold. Wheeler has yet to open talks about a contract extension with the Phillies. But the way he's dominating, the way Hall of Fame voters are changing their view for entrance to Cooperstown, he's not sure he's ready to say goodbye. Never say never, Wheeler. 10-2, 2.16 earned run average, told USA Today Sports after his latest brilliant performance the night of July 21 in the 2-1 loss to the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'll see. It'll probably depend on what happens next year. Something to think about for sure. Now, Phillies executives privately believe that Wheeler will ultimately change his mind, and instead of retiring when his contract expires after next year's season, then he'll want to continue pitching, taking him on a potential road to Cooperstown. If the day comes, he's ready to talk about delaying those retirement plans, the Phillies are all ears. Well, it's tough, says Wheeler, who with his wife Dominique are raising 4 kids, ages 6, 4, 2, and 1. My kids are growing up, and they're at that age where it's important to have both parents around. I want to be there for that and to see them grow and be successful in life. So, we'll see. Wheeler never imagined that he'd be facing this decision. Just 10 months ago, he was lying in the hospital, having his rib removed near his right shoulder during the thoracic outlet decompression surgery, with the Phillies and a lot of others wondering if he'd step on the mound again after the season-ending blood clot. These days, he's the hottest pitcher on the planet, and despite missing the first month of the season, he's starting to find himself in the National League Cy Young conversation. Wheeler, who gave up 5 hits and 2 runs with 9 strikeouts and no walks in 7 innings on Tuesday, just missed being the first pitcher since Atlanta's Spencer Strider in 2023 to strike out at least 10 batters in 4 consecutive games. Wheeler, with 43 strikeouts and just 3 walks in his last 4, is only the second Phillies pitcher in history to accomplish that feat. He now has 20 games with at least 9 strikeouts and no walks, the most in Phillies history, and the only pitcher to accomplish the feat in Major League Baseball since he joined the Phillies in 2020. Maybe my strikeout numbers aren't what they have been for my career per game, Wheeler said. So I do see that. I wanted to get that back up. I'm not going to lie to you. Maybe with 2 strikes, I make a little more concerted effort to punch a guy out. It's a tremendous achievement to simply return and be part of the Phillies starting rotation, but quite another to absolutely dominate, actually pitching better than a year ago when he was in Cy Young contention before his season-ending blood clot. I always saw myself coming back to who I was, or even better, Wheeler said, getting those innings in, and getting the strikeouts and getting some wins. So that was always the mindset coming back, and I'm thankful. It's this determination and domination that could eventually vault Wheeler into Hall of Fame debates. But if he's ever going to have his plaque hanging in the museum with the other all-time greats, he needs to keep pitching. He has just 123 career victories. That's 42 shy of Sandy Koufax, who produced the fewest victories, 165, by a Hall of Fame pitcher in nearly 90 years. Realistically, if Wheeler wants to be elected into the Hall of Fame, he needs more victories. And for Wheeler to get more victories, he needs to continue pitching. The Hall of Fame would be life-changing, something I don't take lightly, Wheeler says. It's definitely something that everybody shoots for, coming into pro ball, even as a kid. You want your face and name on that plaque. It's there forever. But at the same time, I'm human. I'm a family man. So if that time, calls, then it's what it is. Yet it's not as if Wheeler is showing any signs of digression. The 36-year-old continues to defy Father Time. You look, and there hasn't been a better pitcher in baseball since his arrival to Philly 7 years ago. He's 79-38 with a 2.84 earned run average and 1,202 strikeouts. Easily has the best WAR, that's 33.3, of any pitcher during that stretch. Could this stretch probably be good enough to garner Hall of Fame support if he doesn't pitch past 2027 and finishes his career with fewer than 150 victories? I don't know, Wheeler said. Maybe a couple of awards might help something like that, but I really don't know. Things will have to change voting-wise, just because nobody's going to get 300 wins or, whatever it was. It's just a different game. Me, I'm an old school guy. I want to do all of the stuff they did, right? But it's just a different game with these young guys. Things will have to change. Maybe I'll catch that luck or something. Well, if Wheeler keeps pitching like this, that first award could be the Cy Young. He has 4 top 10 Cy Young finishes, but he's never won. He also has 3 All-Star selections on his resume, but was livid that he wasn't selected to the All-Star game this year. When he finally was chosen as an alternate, he passed, saying, "They disrespected me. I'm not going to participate." He has taken that rage out on opposing hitters since the All-Star announcement, going 2-1 with a 1.35 earned run average in his last 3 starts, allowing 11 hits and striking out 33 batters with only 2 walks in 20 innings. So, now that the saga is over, is he going to keep pitching with anger, serving his motivation? Yeah, why not? He said. Seems to be working. Just find a way. That's the biggest thing. Long season, ton of starts. You got to pick your battles and just try to go out there and do well every time. Perhaps the next will be with the Cy Young voters, convincing them that while he might not have the innings quite yet to qualify for the ERA title, he's building a resume that could lead to the Ultimate Pitching Award, and perhaps one that could one day help him through those doors of Cooperstown, too.
NCAA cites threats for opposing predictive gaming. From John Bryce of USA Today. In at times tense, back and forth testimony, July 21st on Capitol Hill, Members from the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Markets, Digital Assets, and Rural Development heard expert and competing testimony that centered around the burgeoning sector of predictive sports futures gambling markets. Though not part of the five-person group of witnesses brought into the session inside the Longworth House office building, the NCAA also supplied extensive written testimony that slammed the growth and haphazard nature of collegiate sport prediction markets that pose a significant threat to both student athletes and the integrity of competition. After being requested to provide formal comments to the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, the NCAA doubled down on its desire to see the CFTC suspend collegiate sport prediction markets until a more robust system with appropriate safeguards is in place. The NCAA, in its provided testimony, made clear it wants a 21 and older mandatory regulation into the space, and also expressed concerns about predictive marketing options centered around individual or multiplayer performances, more commonly known as prop bets. Additionally, the NCAA, which also in January saw its president, Charlie Baker, propose the indefinite suspension of predictive market offerings on collegiate sports, urged the following considerations: consultation with national governing bodies before approval of college sports prediction offerings, as well as dedicated funds for financial literacy and gambling education programs, protection for student athletes via preventative harassment measures that would target angry bettors or market participants. The NCAA also advocated for measures that would provide geolocation data to oversight entities such as CFTC or the NCAA, mandatory monitoring and reporting of suspicious activities, also to oversight bodies such as the CFTC or the NCAA. Also, the NCAA wants guidelines to address the potential confluence of predictive market companies from entering the collegiate name, image, and likeness, which is the NIL space. It also advocated for restrictive advertising measures on college and university campuses. The witness panel included David Bean, chairman of the Indian Gaming Association, Paula Tribe, Chris Cycle of the American Gaming Association, Carl Kennedy, a partner at Catton Munchin Rosenman, and co-chair of that firm's financial markets and regulation practice, Asaf Meyer, a founder of Solidus Labs, Robert Schwartz, partner at Morgan, Lewis & Bacchus. Bean's testimony at times most closely mirrored the NCAA's strident opposition to the predictive gaming markets made popular by such companies as Kalshi and Polymarket, and that have come under intense scrutiny at both federal and state levels, with recent cases in Michigan and Washington taking aim at the predictive entities. Indeed, Kalshi representatives on Tuesday told CNBC that the company added 3 million new users during the nearly month-long World Cup that was hosted across Canada, Mexico, and the United States. Bean picked apart the predictive markets entities for advertising on TikTok and hiring influencers to promote the company's gaming components. Indian gaming is government gaming. Bean testified, every dollar of revenue is spent on tribal education, housing, and government services. Predictive markets avoid our regulatory systems designed to protect consumers and the integrity of the sports. Added Cycle in part, Kalshi and Polymarket make a mockery of consumer intent. 41 states' attorneys general signed off on predictive markets as sports gaming. Both Kennedy and Meyer noted that regulatory measures already are in place for predictive markets, as each testified to that industry's self-regulatory model. They also noted personal data protocols and age-based requirements to participate in predictive markets largely are in place. Bean countered that tribal gaming regulations and those of casino sportsbooks are subjected to national and state gaming regulators. When Kennedy testified that the predictive markets were much like the securities market and futures and derivatives market, noting that Kalsi recently found and disclosed irregular behavior from the White House teleprompter operator, Representative Jill Tokuda, Democrat from Hawaii, cut off Kennedy mid-sentence. You're listening to a reading of today's USA Today on the Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is 1:45. And continuing, I do believe you can put lipstick on a pig. It's still a pig, Taduka said. You can't even AI that pig. It's gambling. It's gaming. I know you've got different lanes, like the type of goals and higher trading and for what purposes. At the end of the day, we're talking about gambling. Cycle blasted the predictive market companies for advertising methods suggesting individuals can pay rent with or having fraternity brothers marketed to get people to sign up is gross and something that would never be allowed by our American gaming industry. Everyone agrees about the importance of market integrity and customer protection. Dusty Johnson, Republican from South Dakota, chair of the Commodity Markets Subcommittee, said in closing remarks, I do think that this subcommittee needs to continue to explore whether or not there are sufficient tools to ensure market integrity and customer protection. Courts are acting in this space. The Commission is acting in this space. I do not believe that Congress should be silent. I do think there is work for us to do here. I agree with Chair Glenn Thompson's statement that this will not be the last hearing we have in this space. I think we have an obligation to try to drive toward finding out what is the common ground. More than one of our witnesses said there is a need for additional clarity. It may be that the courts and commission alone can provide that clarity. Yet, if we don't ask whether or not there is an important role for Congress, we are not doing our jobs.
Moving into the life section, Christopher Nolan's Odyssey fails women in a familiar way. Claire Mulroy of USA Today writes this movie review. One man on a quest far from home. That's a plot summary for many of Christopher Nolan movies. In The Odyssey, which is in theaters now, Nolan employs a slew of Hollywood's brightest leading ladies, including Zendaya, Anne Hathaway, Charlize Theron, and Lupita Nyong'o. Yet, like most other Nolan films, The Odyssey still fails the Bechdel test. To pass that, by the way, two women must have a conversation with each other about something other than a man. Now, unless you count Penelope, played by Hathaway, barking orders at her servant Melantho, played by Mia Goth, no two women interact in the entirety of the 3-hour film. I'm not surprised. Across 28 years and 13 films, Nolan has never cast a female protagonist. But from the trailer and a cast list of Hollywood royalty, it seemed perhaps Nolan was turning a corner. Expect more of a slight shuffle to the side. Penelope and Circe, played by Samantha Morton, do poignantly contextualize the horror women suffer at the cost of men and their wars. But I largely left the theater dreaming of an Odyssey that realized the full potential of its actresses. Nolan's Achilles heel is a half-baked female character. Think back to Oppenheimer, in which Emily Blunt plays a scientist you probably forgot was a scientist, or his dead wife trope. And by the film's name alone, you know you're getting a story about one man, Odysseus. But the Odyssey also is about the people and gods who help and thwart his journey home. Many of them are women. Athena actively guides him. Calypso traps him. Penelope remains faithful and rules Ithaca in his absence, cunningly stalling her suitors. In standout moments, the women of the Odyssey show how they are victims of patriarchal, violent rule. Nyong'o's Helen objects that she's the reason for the war, despite being the face that launched 1,000 ships. Her sister, Clytemnestra, also played by Nyong'o, kills King Agamemnon, played by Benny Safdie, after he sacrifices their daughter to curry favor with the gods. Circe, played by Morton, turns Odysseus's men into pigs, only to expose their true nature, afraid of what they might do to her. And in a departure from the poem, it's Odysseus's impassioned speech, not sex, that gets her to reverse it. Penelope laments that men will ultimately decide her fate, whether it's her son or the many suitors at her door. She snaps at her son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, when he encourages her to move on and remarry, so he can become king of Ithaca. I've been sitting on that empty throne for 20 years, she says. Hathaway told Entertainment Weekly she showed the movie to a friend who felt the women get blamed for everything in the Odyssey and was impressed by Nolan's rendition. Notably, Calypso, played by Theron, decides out of care for Odysseus that she'll let him leave, knowing she'll be fine without him. In the poem, it's only when Zeus forces her that she relents. Their beach-bound, lotus-filled bliss is far different from the reality of Homer's story, where she's holding him hostage for sex. Nolan does not develop the character as fully as he could have, but he does give her nuance and agency in the way his other female characters sometimes lack. But largely, the Odyssey is in line with other Nolan movies. The women are there only to propel the male characters forward. Nyong'o, despite playing two characters, lacks screen time. Or take Zendaya's ethereal Athena, the one god seen in Nolan's adaptation. Athena and Odysseus share a sort of mentor-mentee relationship. She's upset by the Greek sacking of Troy, but she also guides him along. Now, yep, Zendaya's character is relegated to head-nodding and offering reassurances to Matt Damon's Odysseus. It's a far cry from the active role the goddess plays in delivering him home in the book. Now, lest we forget, it was Athena who petitioned Zeus to allow Odysseus to return. And I wish she appeared to Telemachus and encouraged him to confront the suitors as she did in Homer. Nolan's Odysseus would rather have us believe in the fortitude of men rather than the goddess working behind the scenes. I find it interesting that Nolan, a director so often criticized for his portrayal of women, specifically cited Emily Wilson's Odyssey translation ahead of the release. The first English edition by a woman often is called feminist, using plain descriptors such as women and girls, while other male translators have inserted sluts and whores. Wilson herself was not confident Nolan's adaptation would be feminist. If it's the usual Nolan plot of a guy is on a quest far from home, struggling to get back to an objectified female character, then I'm not sure I see that plot as inherently particularly feminist, Wilson told Vulture. The Odyssey itself is not a female-centered story. Despite having some amazing female characters and actors, I don't think Nolan's going to do a female-centered story either. Hathaway at least can add to her list of standout Nolan-directed performances, but at the end of the day, the Odyssey isn't doing much more than slotting comfortably into Nolan's Men's on Quest canon.
Stewart finally gets his hero moment. From Brian Alexander of USA Today. Normally, when Hollywood actors take on a hero role, they invariably have war stories about grueling training regimens, not Big Bang Theory star Kevin Sussman, whose comic book store owner Stuart Bloom returns for an awkward and accidental action drama in HBO Max's mind-bending spin-off, Stewart Fails to Save the Universe. First episode airs Thursday today at 9 p.m. Eastern Time and 6 p.m. Pacific Time. Sussman, 55, not only declined to train for the role, but also ignored valuable workout advice from Brie Larson, his co-star in Apple TV's Lessons in Chemistry, who knows action quite well after portraying Captain Marvel in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He immediately regretted not heeding Larson's advice when doing wirework scenes that involved his high IQ character flying through the air in Stewart, 7 years after the geek-centric Big Bang concluded its 12-season CBS run in 2019. I remember Larson saying you have to have hard rock abs for those scenes because you're suspended by this harness thing. It can be really taxing, Sussman says. And when I read my flying scene in the script, I knew I had to follow that advice, and I didn't. And Larson was right. Fortunately, the Spotlight Stewart role is only sometimes what Sussman calls stunt adjacent. Stewart, who moved in with a comic book employee and girlfriend Denise, played by Lauren Lapkus, in the 2019 Big Bang series finale, returns to Pasadena's The Comic Center as the universe is unraveling. It's eventually explained in Stewart that after Big Bang Central nerds Sheldon Cooper, played by Jim Parsons, and Leonard Hofstadter, played by Johnny Galecki, created a dimension-traveling device. Stewart accidentally broke it, triggering multiverse Armageddon. Because he busted it, only the asthma-enduring, sweater-loving Stewart can save the universe. Stewart is joined on the multiverse-spanning mission by reunited girlfriend Denise, along with brainiac Big Bang friends from Sheldon's alma mater. Caltech proud geologist Bert Kibler, who is played by comedian Peter Posen, and Sheldon's nemesis, quantum physicist Barry Kripke, played by John Ross Bowie. Yet even forever scheming Kripke has to acknowledge Stewart is the Neo-esque chosen one, transforming the socially anxious comic book store manager into the action hero of his own comic book adventure. He's the least likely romantic, heroic character you can imagine. And that's the joy of it, says Big Bang and Stewart co-creator Chuck Lorre, who originally cast Sussman for a season 2 Big Bang guest role, and that became a fan favorite series regular. If you think who should be the hero in our journey to save reality, Stewart would be my last chosen, which is why he's the choice. Sussman had the ultimate geek job to prepare for Stewart, working at New York City's Jim Henley's Universe, JHU Comic Books, for 4 years while attending acting school. It wasn't for his love of comic books either. Sussman concedes having few job options, since the actor wasn't trusted for physically demanding waiter jobs. Restaurant managers looked at me and were like, "There's no way we're going to trust that guy to carry trays with dishes." And they were not wrong, says Sussman, who came to appreciate the Stargard gig. It's a great job for an actor, since nothing really urgent ever happens at a comic book store. You've been listening to a reading of articles from USA Today for Thursday, July 23rd, 2026. We read USA Today's weekdays at noon. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
Ken Drost
and Jim Duffy.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring.